I sometimes get asked the question, what is better for me to do? Dopamine fasting or quitting porn? Scandinavian Bob here, hi. Yeah, real voice and person behind this video, who has been involved in the porn addiction community for 13 years now. So if you're getting tired of all these fake AI videos out there, consider subscribing. Well, we can't really ask a question like that, as dopamine fasting is something you do in periods, where you do different kinds of fasting protocols that can last anywhere from 1 to 2 days up to sometimes several weeks, while quitting porn is not a temporary protocol, so we can't compare them head to head like that. But let's still play around with this question a bit. I think what some of the guys are trying to find out when asking me that question is which one of them they should focus on first, and the answer to that is simple. You should focus more on quitting or reducing porn first, because that one is the one that is having the most negative impact on your dopamine system, and thus it will have the biggest bang for your dopamine buck when you start giving it up. Yeah, listen, I seriously believe every man who wants to feel good, have amazing confidence and be successful in life should give up the porn. Then, once you have started to do better on your no porn journey, you can also start playing around with different dopamine fasting protocols every now and then. Because, here's the thing, when you give up the porn and go on a NoFap journey, you will pretty quickly start to notice just how awesome you start feeling, and one can really be taken by surprise by all the NoFap benefits that can start roll around. But then, if you then on top of that start adding in different dopamine fasting protocols, I swear to God, it is like you start to unlock new NoFap levels with even stronger benefits. And I will give you an example of that in just a moment. But first, let me make it clear. It's not like you have to wait until you are completely free from porn before trying different dopamine fasting protocols. In fact, dopamine fasting can help you on your journey to quit porn. But if you are in the very beginning of your journey and you just want to be selective with your focus and you wanted to pick just one, then I'd say focus on getting better at rebooting first. You know, many years ago, I got to learn just how destructive porn is for the brain. And by reading different forums, I also discovered how great people started feeling when they managed to give it up. So then, as a logical person, I remember thinking to myself, that good feeling the guys are describing is probably only happening because they have quit the porn and now their brains and their dopamine system have returned back to a normal, healthy state. And since they were so far down and felt so bad in the midst of their porn addiction, now with a healthy brain, they feel amazing in comparison. And I was thinking that once you get to optimal brain health, there is probably nowhere left to go upwards in terms of dopamine health after that. And yes, I still believe that's the case for most guys in terms of only rebooting. But once I discovered the concept of dopamine fasting, I have to tell you, I now know I was wrong about reaching even higher levels. I now believe that even if you fully rebooted from porn and your dopamine receptors have recovered and your dopamine system is super healthy again, you can go even higher by implementing different dopamine fasting protocols and start reaching even higher levels. I believe this is happening because even after restoring your brain to optimal dopamine receptor levels, dopamine fasting can further enhance these receptors, surpassing your natural baseline. You get a denser dopamine receptor site with more sensitive receptors as well. You basically get a supercharged dopamine system. And when this happens, oh man, it is like you are being high on life. And I know I am a middle-aged man now, so I should probably stay away from saying what I'm about to say. But I have seen it so many times now that I just have to say it. I believe it is when you reach these new levels that you can start experiencing the strongest of that so-called NoFap attraction phenomenon. And other strange things also seems to start happening. You know, I do not think there's any secret to life. But if I had to pick one thing that would be closest to it, I would say the secret to life is to have a supercharged dopamine system. Now, I have made a video where I share how I once did a 48-hour fast from food that I also made into a dopamine fast where I didn't use any technology at all. And I did almost nothing else than meditated several times a day. And after that fast was over, I felt so amazingly good. And I started experiencing some seriously strange things in terms of that attraction phenomenon. And I can link to that video in the end of this one. But right now, I just want to share another thing. I just yesterday remembered a book I read many years ago called 10% Happier by Dan Harris. Now, I don't remember everything from that book, but it was about him trying to find some help for his anxiety attacks and his journey towards discovering the world of meditation and mindfulness. Now, here's the deal. It was so many years ago when I read this book, so that was before I had started learning about things like dopamine fasting. Well, I might have been on my second year of rebooting back then, so I was learning about dopamine, but the concept of dopamine fasting was not something I had started thinking about. But I remember at one point in the book, Dan went to a so-called silent retreat. That retreat was somewhere in the peaceful countryside, a camp where people went to rest and recharge their batteries. Now here's the thing. The people there ate together in the dining room, but they were not allowed to talk to each other. And if I remember correctly, Dan was not allowed to use his phone or any kind of technology. So obviously he couldn't work, he couldn't surf the internet or anything like that. And I think he wasn't even allowed to read. Now don't quote me on that, as it is such a long time I read the book. But anyway, the point being that the only thing he did for several days in a row was to meditate several times a day. And he took slow, mindful walks in nature. Now at the time of reading that book, I didn't know it. But now when thinking back on that book, I of course now realize that, hey, that's one hell of a dopamine fasting protocol right there, because he had zero stimuli coming in for several days in a row. Now here's the real kicker. I remember from that book how he first hated it because he was obviously bored out of his mind. He was even thinking about escaping and leaving the retreat, but he stuck to it, and towards the end of his retreat, and for many days after as well, he said that he has never ever in his whole life felt so amazingly good. He said it was like he was high on life and everything was magical. And if I remember correctly, he even said he felt so good that the feeling was even better than any recreational drugs he had tried in the past. And now without those drugs, of course. And this was in a healthy way, because he was so sharp. His brain was so laser-like focused. He had that childlike excitement for life. He was healthy in every way, and there were no calm down or crash afterwards either. So it was a healthy high. His dopamine receptors must have been significantly upregulated, which is just what we want. And Dan had a history of having been using, for example, cocaine at some point in his life. So when he said that the feeling was better than anything he had tried before, one has to know that it must have been pretty awesome. So it is obvious to me that our dopamine system can go above and beyond just its normal healthy state. And I seriously believe that dopamine fasting truly is a way to reach these even higher levels of NoFap.
And speaking of dopamine and excitement for life, if you want to know if your dopamine system is currently working for you or against you, and how much corn has potentially affected you, you can take my free dopamine quiz right now by using the link under the video. Just click on that right now to get your own personal dopamine score. And okay guys, if you want to know why I personally decided to give up adult sites, I reveal it all in this video right here. This is Scandinavian Bob signing out for today. Consider giving me a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.